All right, we're getting really close to starting time. How's everybody doing? I want you guys to be loud. This is going to be exciting. We're going to have lots of fun. So how's everybody doing? Good? Good con? That's what I'm talking about. This one's been pretty good, pretty good. I got a little bit more sleep this year than last year, so I think hopefully this is a little more coherent and more exciting than I talked last year. All right, it's officially 11. Let's get started. I got tons of stuff to cover. I'm so excited. All right. This talk is Wi-Fi surveillance at DEF CON 24. Who knows what DEF CON is? Raise your hands. That's what I'm talking about. Yeah, you guys rock. Okay. Now with 80% more cyber. All right, so who am I? Init.d. I hack stuff. I like computer languages. I like the cyber stuff. Sometimes I cyber and cyber stuff. Sometimes I cyber while doing cyber. You guys are going to get really annoyed. And that picture on the right is, what? That's what I'm talking about. Funny anecdote, I'll tell you afterwards. Come find me. Okay. I love crowd participation. Funny thing about the picture on the right there, that's me over in the very bottom left of the corner. That's the Black Hat knock, and I'm somehow in there. I didn't actually go to Black Hat to be in Black Hat or to work in the knock, but thanks to some really awesome people, I was able to get my equipment put in the Black Hat knock. We'll get into that in a second. Oh, side note, I have a bachelor's degree in computer science, and this really isn't my job description, but I do this all night long, and I don't ever sleep. So, all right. So, what is this project? What are we going to be talking about? So, basically, this is the chronicles of the fixed point wireless surveillance at Black Hat and DEF CON. Now, I didn't specifically put Black Hat on the initial slide because I'll tell you a little bit about the story, and we had some challenges. Some of my hardware didn't show up. We'll get into that a bit more later. And we're going to talk about the hardware. We're going to talk about the software, different challenges, and in the end, the datas. That's the really important part, right? All right, so what are you guys in for? We're going to talk really light Wi-Fi primer. Last year I did a talk. I did about 5 minutes of primer, so you can go find that video on YouTube if you're interested. So yeah, don't worry, we're not going to get super deep into it. If you need more Wi-Fi primer, sorry, this isn't the talk. This is going to be about the experience. Then we're going to get into the wireless surveillance, the hardware deployments, data captures, and the fails. Yeah, there was a lot of fails. When you try to pull off a project like this, with the scope that we did, there's a lot of fails. And what am I going to do for the future? All right, quick Wi-Fi primer. Data's encoded on waves. You've got management frames, you've got control frames, you've got data frames. Sometimes you can see data all the way up to the 7th layer of this OSI 7-layer model if they're not encrypted or if you decrypt. And it's magical and it somehow works. And this year at this conference, I don't know, well, at Weber last year it was awesome. The Wi-Fi was awesome as well. But here, coming to a new convention center, like, it's been flawless for me. So awesome work on the Wi-Fi. Okay, so last year, did any of you see my talk last year? A couple of you? So basically, real quick, I'll go into that. In 2015, at DEF CON 23, I decided that I wanted to do a war walking project. So I got a BeagleBone Black, and I got a little ghetto plastic box, threw it in my backpack, and started walking around the convention. I tried to get at least 9 hours a day of data and just tried to capture whatever I could. And I was using AeroDump, part of the AirCrack suite, to capture that data. And this was truly the beginning of a big project that this year went to next level. Oh, and by the way, there's boxes up here in the front. Feel free to come up and take a look at them. It won't interrupt me, or interrupt me. I mean, we got hecklers already, so let's do this. So feel free to come check it out. Come put your hands on it, come see it. So yeah, come get involved. So that last year really started something big. And it was because of the talk here at Saintcon that made this year possible. So at the end of last year, everyone always says, hey, I'm going to do a bunch of things in the future. Well, which ones did I pull off? All right, so last year I wanted to add 3 or 4 more monitoring radios. Boom, nailed it. I've got multiple radios in these boxes. Proof's in these boxes. You can come up and take a look at what's in there. I wanted to capture on other bands. I wanted to get 2.4 gigahertz, 5 gigahertz. I didn't get 900 though. Didn't get 900. But that's pretty non-standard. You don't see a lot of people doing Wi-Fi over 900 megahertz. It's pretty rare. Plus, it's a really small spectrum. I think it's like 15 megahertz. I wanted to capture on other devices like a hack RF. Didn't happen. Too expensive, cost prohibitive. I could have used like a RTL SDR, but time was also constrained. So it's not just the money cost, it's the time cost too. Okay, I wanted to create and deploy nodes throughout the conference and establish baseline captures and correlate positions. So I was able to do that, but we're going to see some fails about processing the data. But I have the data to potentially do this in the future. All right, software, live monitoring, or live tweet my progress, sorry. I wanted to be able to like have the boxes say, hey, internet, I've captured so many gigs, I've done this. I even set up a Twitter account called like DEF CON War Walking or something like that. Started doing the API, again, too expensive, too much time. Automate the analytics. Oh, analytics are tough. Analytics are super hard. And so that was one of the hard things this year. I started writing some of the analytics, the automation rather, that were just wrappers around T-sharks because I'm going to be dealing with PCAPs. So in the end, I got more capture. So I was pretty happy about ending up getting more capture, getting more data, getting more visibility into what the network was. So first off, I am standing on the shoulders of great giants to be doing this project. Like, first off, without this conference, I would never have been able to do this at all. Hooked me up and got me into DEF CON and made everything happen there. Minnow Board was actually a sponsor of me. They donated tons of hardware. So real quick, I missed it on a couple slides back, sorry. What happened is we have 12 boxes. We were able to get 12 boxes assembled thanks to Minnow Board, who donated the hardware for about 90% of that to be able to place these nodes throughout DEF CON. So that's 12 places that we were monitoring throughout a convention that had 20,000 people this year, plus, 20,000 plus. And then finally, Warthog 9 was instrumental. He was my contact that got me hooked up into Minnow Board. He works with Minnow Board. And the interesting thing is, as soon as I got to DEF CON, looked at the badge, I flipped it over, and there was his name on the back of the DEF CON badge. So he didn't just help me, he helped 20,000 people get their badges made. So he coordinated with Lost and DEF CON conference to be able to make the DEF CON badge this year. So I had no idea. He never even told me about that, and I was just so thankful and appreciative that he would take time to help somebody like me do a project because he clearly was doing much bigger projects. So thank you to these people, and thanks. There's many more that I didn't list right here. If you've helped me in any way, like, thank you so much. I couldn't have done it without you. All right. So 2 years ago, or a year ago, man, time is hard. A year ago, when I did the War Walking project with BeagleBone Black, I used AirCrack. How many of you have used AirCrack? Quite a bit of you. Awesome. Great. So what's the point of AirCrack? You're going to crack passwords. You're going to crack WEP. You're going to crack WEP, right? I said that. Redundant. You're going to try to crack different encryptions that are happening on the wireless, right? So I was using it because I was using AeroDump. Well, I grew up using TCP dump on Linux command line. So I'm like, oh, AeroDump must be the equivalent of TCP dump. Guess what? It's not. Like you're getting you can get PCAPs out of AeroDump, but guess what they do? They strip everything unimportant or that doesn't help you get to cracking data. So what happens when you're trying to do full analysis and do location tracking, trying to get signal strength and trying to get other frames? It's not there. You're looking through it and you're like frantically saying, I know this card can capture signal strength. the Linux drivers say it works. They're open source. I can see it in the C code. Well, I got on the forums, or excuse me, the IRC channel with Aircrack guys, and I'm like, why do you guys filter all this out? And they're like, you're using the wrong tool. And I'm like, what do you mean I'm using the wrong tool? You're using the wrong tool for this job. Aircrack is specifically for cracking passwords. It is optimized for that. You don't use it for anything else. They're like, why aren't you using Kismet? And I'm like, Kismet? You mean the tool that I install on a laptop and then go show my friends that I can see wireless because it has a pretty cool GUI? They're like, yeah, Kismet. Go look into it. Go read the docs. And it turns out Kismet is the bomb. Kismet is amazing. So I started digging head deep into it. Kismet has a back-end service that runs and captures. It automates spectrum hopping. It will automatically find all the data, and it captures full frame. Everything that you can throw at it, it captures. So Kismet is amazing. Plus, they're starting to develop an IDS, a wireless intrusion detection system that's open source, as in free money, and you get the source code too. So basically what happened with the Kismet is I installed it on each of these boxes, and it was able to run it, and it was efficient, it had full packets, and it worked well. So if you have played with Kismet, awesome. If you haven't, go install it and start listening to the wireless that's going on around here. And the other thing, with the IDS, it automatically does analytics for you. So awesome. That helped me out so much for this presentation because I'm lazy. I'm super lazy. All right, the hardware. Let's talk about the hardware. Yesterday, I kind of broke down the Minnow board in the Hardware Hacking Village. If anybody caught that, this may be a little bit redundant. I'm not going to go as deep into it. Just going to glance over it. But I'm going to talk about what the rest of the things in the box. So what do we have in here? This was the prototype. Intel Minnow board. I had purchased one for work and was like, these things are rad. They're super fast. They've got lots of horsepower. They've got USB 3.0. I'll get into the actual specs on the next slide. Threw this together, threw some wireless adapters in a box, and I'm like, hey, look, I have a solution. What can I do with this solution? I'm going to put it in my backpack and war walk again. That was my plan anyways. But then I started like thinking, oh yeah, last year I said I want to go bigger than that. So then I built that prototype, or morphed the prototype rather. I drilled holes in it and put some antennas on it. And that's the box up here on the right corner if you want to come check that one out. And I was just super happy to be able to have this thing capture. So last year when I was capturing, I was using 2 radios, but only one of them was I actively listening on and capturing data. So I was channel hopping 12 channels every second. Every second it would change a channel. So it took 12 seconds to get a spectrum. So you're going to get tons of missed data and malformed packets when you do that. So how do you stop that? Increase the number of radios. So this box had 3 radios in it, and it seemed to work pretty well. Plus, I did some custom soldering, which I'm totally not awesome at, as you can see in the box, to be able to make it so I could plug in a battery into it, and then also I could switch where the battery is, plug it in, and then charge off of it. So, and that battery gave me about 10 hours, because my initial thought is, I don't know if I'm going to get approval to do this project, so I'm going to use a battery on it. I'm going to make them dead drops, so I could just go set them places. 10 hours, we can make this work. So, but I also wanted to be able to plug into the wall. I wanted to be able to plug it in so I could set it, fix location, and so I've got a DC transformer in there as well. And then, so this was one of the final pieces of the prototype where I have a little screen. It's like a Raspberry Pi screen. It just has HDMI input, and there it's running full-blown Kali because these are Intel Atoms. It's running full x64, x86, 64-bit Kali. So it's just nice. It works. Okay, so further on the hardware real quick, I kind of glanced over some of this. Powered USB hub. I have 70-watt AC to DC converter to get me some 5 volts. 8-post terminal block, because you got to have terminal block in your boxes, right? Alpha AC 1200. That's an 802.11 AC card. And then in every box, but the one that has external antennas, they have 3 TP links, TLWN722N, which are the Atheros 9721 chipset, which is amazing in Linux. That is the most friendly card that you can get in Linux. You plug it in and it works because the drivers are in the kernel. And it goes into monitor mode. So the other thing too is I've got an Ethernet feed through in the box, but that plugs into the Minnow board, which has gigabit Ethernet. So when I need to push my data off of it, these boards are super fast. And then I had a 64 gig USB 3.0 flash drive as my primary drive that ran these. Why? Because USB 3 is pretty freaking fast. So moving on in the story, about a month before DEF CON, I bought boxes. They showed up, but I didn't have any brains or hardware to go in them. The problem was that we were still negotiating on how to get me parts. So when you're dealing with a company like Minnow Board that's actually a subsidy or like somehow open source initiative that's funded by Intel, they have very stringent lines how you can get stuff. So we had some drama. Basically, I wanted to get everything set up in advance as fast as possible because I knew this was going to be a hectic project. I didn't have my stuff, and I started getting stressed. But the show must go on. So the month turned into the week before DEF CON, still didn't have the stuff. It was Monday, the first official day of Black Hat that wasn't the trainings, and the show must go on. I packed up. At that point, I had built 2 prototype boxes, and then I had my war walking rig from the year before, and I knew there was fries down there. And so with that in mind, I'm like, I can pull off some sort of monitoring. Hardware still hadn't shown up yet, so I was super stressed about that. So this is sorry about all the cheesy animations too. I was like just randomly clicking them in PowerPoint because why not, right? I don't think anyone's used the spin flip picture thing in years. Hey, thanks, man. That's what I'm talking about. Thanks, Troy. I heart you. Okay, so this is what my room looked like. I was staying at Excalibur because when you're last minute planning things, all the rooms at the conference usually book up, and it was at Mandalay Bay. So I'm trying to get all my stuff set up, and so I'm like, but I want to deploy it Black Hat. Huge thanks to Grifter and to Stumper, Bart Stumper, who hooked me up and got me into the Black Hat NOC. I get over there with my bag, and I had 2 boxes because that's all I could deploy. And I'm like, I'm gonna do what I can here. None of my stuff had shown up yet, but I want to capture data because I want to do this talk today. That was my mindset. So the picture on the left is my backpack with the antennas sticking out. I didn't have a badge, so I was just walking around the conference with antennas sticking out of my backpack because why not, right? Got to test out how tough the conference staff is. Plus, I figured with the people that I knew, if I got in trouble, I wouldn't get too badly in trouble. And then sometimes I like to make a little bit of trouble. And the picture on the right is thanks to Dumby. He walked me over to one of so this part I was actually escorted to one of the stages next to the keynote. And I just decided to put the box underneath the stage in the keynote, plug it in, right into the power strip that they so nicely left open for me, left my box in there, and just captured traffic during the keynote, during the talks. And that box caught I think that box ended up catching about 1 gig of data. So pretty cool. All right. So I also end up getting some boxes in the NOC, or a box in this NOC rather. That was an article from PC Magazine, and in the nice orange box there, that's my box. So I scoured the internet for everyone who took pictures of the NOC and stuff, and was like, can I find my stuff in your pictures? It was like playing Where's Waldo. It was amazing. So it just was fun, super fun and validating. All right. So then, let's see. So now, like in the timeline of things, we are on Wednesday, the day before DEF CON starts. And parts showed up. I couldn't believe it. So they showed up to my house, and the reason why they were delayed, because the shipping people put it in a box that was labeled lithium ion inside, ship ground, and check it at every single stop for some reason. Guess what? There was nothing lithium ion in there. Like, we were going to do batteries. We took out batteries because we found out we were going to get AC plugs at all of our locations. So there was no batteries in there. We just got hosed on that. So luckily, I had a friend of mine, Brian, huge thank you to him. He was able to grab the stuff off of my porch at 7 in the morning before he was coming down to DEF CON, and drove down and brought me my stuff. And he got down by like 11 in the morning, the day before DEF CON. This is what the assembly party started looking like. That's a lot of radios. That's like 65 radios right there, maybe even 70 if you count the 802.11ac ones. And that's 12 minnow boards. Everything was in boxes. Everything was all packaged up. When you're doing one or two, you don't even think about it. It's like, oh, yep, I'm in the box. I got it open. Not a big deal. But when you're doing this many, you have to establish an assembly line for pulling crap out of boxes. So somehow we pulled it off. We assembled all of these boxes, and it wasn't just me. It was my friend Henry. It was Brian. We had randos showing up at my room wanting to help out. It was fantastic. Like, just the support of the community is amazing. When people hear that you're doing a project, then it's like you're golden. They help you. People help you, and it's awesome. So, one of the most awesome things that had happened at DEF CON was when the staff sent 3 people up to come escort me through the conference. Thanks to that guy right there, Comp. And in the background, anybody, if you know Jeremy, he was one of the goons who helped escort me around. And so one of the coolest things is we were walking through track 1, which is where the CGC event was. Or no, sorry, excuse me, track 2 is CGC. Track 1, in the middle of a presentation, we walked down the middle of the aisle. There was 5 of us holding boxes, each 2 boxes in our hands, to go deploy them. And like, at first they're like, do you want to do this? I'm like, yeah, sure, why not? It's like, Troy just interrupted me. You got to go interrupt a talk every now and then. And so it just felt really awesome to do it. And I was with Red Shirt Goons. Like, you could do almost anything with those guys. So that was fantastic. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the locations. This is a picture of the NOC. And if anybody knows about NOCs, you want to make sure that you keep your NOC safe. And the people who are invested in the NOC want to keep it very safe, especially at a conference, a hacker conference. So I'm like, can I take pictures of the NOC? They're like, no. Can I take pictures of my boxes? What are you going to take pictures of? I'm like, this? Well, let me see the picture. Or let me see what you want to take a picture of. All right, you can take a picture of that. And so I wasn't able to get any more pictures. But that's in the NOC. I promise, that's in the DEF CON NOC. And I had Ethernet uplinks there and was able to get internet access there too. Okay. So now it was capture time. We putting the boxes out, we'd got everything deployed, and man, getting things deployed in a conference is super hard because the environment is dynamic, things are changing, people are doing different talks, they're tearing down walls, they're putting up walls, they're having a band come in, they're taking the power out. It's amazing how things change. So don't ask me about what my SLA was, because I don't know, my uptime was not very great. And the boxes, I only had power up links. We didn't have Ethernet to them, so I had no real-time monitoring on them. So my monitoring was, hey, we've got people deployed, go check on the boxes and see if there's a blue light. If there's not a blue light on them, then text me, and I'll run over and see if we can put the box. Okay, so this situation here is, it was under a table, but then that had a tablecloth on it. But then they decided to move the table and the tablecloth because they're opening up the venue. But they left my box there and they left the power plugged in. So that was so nice of them. I was so excited to just see it there. And then I'm like, wait, when did that happen? And it was like a few hours before the venue had shut down. So it was very possible that someone could have came in and stole one of the boxes. And so I walk in, I see my box just sitting over there, and I'm like, am I scared or nervous? I'm like, no, I'm going to just leave it. I'm going to leave the box there, and let's see if somebody steals it. If somebody steals it, that's an awesome story. And since my boxes were donated, I didn't think that they'd be too angry if one got stolen. Then nobody stole it. So that's an even better story. At a hacker conference, a box sitting in the middle of the floor, like everybody left it alone. It's like, hey, it must be legit. It must have been the TSA locks I clipped on it, because that must have been the secret. TSA locks for the win. All right. This is another picture. It's a little bit fuzzy. I apologize. In the background, that's the CGC server. So my boxes definitely got to see the action of the CGC, what was going down with that. And this box was interesting. One of the things that had happened is in the CGC room, they decided that they were going to do a concert in there. So they pulled back all of the chairs, took them out of the room, and then they moved the room as close as they could to the server racks, and they brought in speaker systems and gates. My box somehow ended up on the side. Again, nobody messed with it, so we went and redeployed it. We ended up just putting it under the table. There was one problem with this table for the closed captioning. So it would be like this screen. So this screen has kind of like a drop cloth on it. I could probably put something on the side that doesn't look too conspicuous. But to some people, it does. There was this security officer that was there for CGC who saw it and got really concerned. Why is this box just sitting here plugged in to what? So, of course, he started to investigate and figure out what's going on with that. He then contacted some of the people at the conference. Box gets confiscated. I get an email saying, hey, there's a problem with one of the boxes. I'm like, okay, no big deal. Like, did somebody steal it? Did something happen? Like, and then I get a text, not like 10 minutes later, hey, one of your boxes is gone. Meet me in the boardroom. I'm like, what's the boardroom? They're like, that's the place where they organize and orchestrate the conference. You need to get there. I'm like, okay, oh crap. So I start heading there, and then another person runs into me, another goon. It was Jeremy, and he's like, did you hear about what happened to your box? And I'm like, no. I don't know what's going on. So me and him walk into the boardroom. There's my box sitting on the table. There's the conference organizer, Dark Tangent, sitting in there. There's Troy is in there for some reason because he was working with CGC. And like, I'm just like, I'm not supposed to be in here. I don't know what's going on. I apologize for any inconvenience. And it actually turned into a really cool situation because Dark Tangent asked me, he's like, what's this box? And I'm like, it's a wireless deployment project. Do you want to hear more about it? And he's like, yeah. And so I gave him a quick 5-minute spill of the boxes I had deployed. And as far as I knew, he was not aware of my project being deployed at his conference. He wasn't. It's official. So I kind of got to explain my project to him. So it was a very serendipitous situation that was exciting because I've always revered Dark Tangent. I've been going to DEF CON for a really long time. And I think that he's a fantastic person and always wanted to meet him. And then to be able to meet him and show him my project, I was blown away for that opportunity. It was amazing. Hey, I think we're doing pretty good on time. Everybody doing okay? We having fun? That's what I'm talking about. Thank you. All right, so now we're going to get to the aftermath. Dun, dun, dun. All right. So, what happened? I had 12 boxes deployed throughout the conference on multiple levels of the conference. I'll pull up a map in a second and give you some more understanding of the conference layout. I caught 237,000 unique SSIDs. That's crazy. So what are those? What's happening there? You've got people's phones beaconing, saying, hey, are you any of my networks I have saved in my phone, right? Some people as many as 100, I'm not going to say who, probably me, have that beaconing out. So there's that. You've got people that are setting up access points to try to trick people to connect to them. So there's that. And then you've just got the hotels, you got people doing the wireless, there's the legitimate ones that are the conference ones. It was crazy. That was so many SSIDs to see. Another interesting thing, because how many have iPhones in here? When you turn on the hotspot, what does it say? Mike's awesome iPhone, right? So it's in the name. iPhone, you can see the hotspot, right? And so I grepped for that. 311 iPhone hotspots were captured in my data. I was like, that's awesome. So yeah. Of course, yes, some of them could have been spoofed because, you know, we're broadcasting out. But I still think that was pretty neat. 75 SSIDs contain naughty words. That was pretty fun to write that regular expression. So last year, when I was doing the presentation, I just had the PCAPs and was just scrolling through them. And so this year, I figured I'd have a little more tact and just go with that. 39 SSIDs were clearly set by real hackers. Like, they were the hackers, you know, because obviously they wrote LEET and Haxor and, you know, different variations in their thing. So definitely wanted to connect to those networks. All right, so what else? 117,000 unique transmitter addresses, MAC addresses. That's crazy number of devices. Okay, real quick background. DEF CON was held at the Paris and at Bally's. This is the second year of that. Last year was the first year. You know what happened? Before that, it was at the Rio. There's not very many regular people that were at the Rio because it's clear off of the Strip. But then when you host a hacker conference in downtown Vegas, you start getting, if you're listening on all the radio waves, you're going to start getting collateral listening happening. So I'm thinking that's why this MAC address number is so high, because the conference spanned these two spaces. I think that there was a lot of people that I also saw their MAC address. There was 136,000 unique source addresses. So it's kind of weird to see a little bit differentiation between the two, to be able to see that there was higher on the other one. Typically, you'd think that that'd be like 1-to-1, because typically your transmitter address is your client, your source address is your AP, but not all in every case. Still, this was some interesting stuff. I did not even anticipate this. And then down in the bottom, if you can see it, can you guys read that? Not. Basically, I ran one select query on my data set. It took 6 hours to run on my laptop. Anyone want to buy me a new laptop? Okay, so this is what the venue looked like and where the data came from. So in red, that's around 10 gigs of data, and then on the other side is the blue, about 1 gig of data caught. Each of the circles, at the center of those circles, is where my boxes were located. On the left-hand side, the far left-hand side, you'll see the Indigo Tower. The Indigo Tower is where they had the wireless hacking village. They had the, what else was in there? Capture the packets, SkyTalks were over in something else. And some chill out spaces. What was it? Ham radio tests too. There was guys, you were capable of doing your ham radio exam there. So that had quite a bit of data, about 5 to 6 gigs of data, each point over there. So I had that whole floor covered like crazy. On the left, on the side next to that, in the Bally's area, that's where they had like the Capture the Flag event. That's where the contests were. That's where the hardware hacking village was. That's where the vendors were. That's where this place called Cafe Arcade was, which was a chill out space where people would just go, sit down, work on their laptops. Great place. I ended up getting like 7 gigs there alone. On the right-hand side is the tracks, the speaking tracks. It's kind of interesting. I got like a bit less data in the speaking tracks. Probably because it's not like here, you can't set up your laptop. You can put it on your lap. It's a little more inconvenient. But at the knock, I still gathered a bunch of data. Why? Because people were probably coming through registration, waiting in line, had their devices out, doing their thing. So that was pretty interesting to see. The red one, the red circle at the bottom of the parrot there is centered around where the knock was located. All right, so I wanted to do location tracking. Unfortunately, that's all Photoshop. The problem with location tracking is you have this thing called free space loss, free airspace loss calculation. So basically, you can use that equation and calculate out what distance is from signal strength. So when you have a wireless transmitter and you're listening, you can determine an estimation of what the signal strength is. Now, if that were a straight line between me and you, then you could be able to determine, based on the speed of light and some of the other factors that are in there, how fast that wave moves and the frequency. I know what the frequency is, right? Because I know what band I caught it on. How far away from me you are. Well, there's a problem. All of our wireless manufacturers want throughput because consumers want more throughput. So what do? They throw waves instead of in a straight line every direction. They're blasting the same wave. That one's probably has like 10 radios in it, blasting 10 different ways to get the data to this point here. And it works better and faster and more reliable. So that's called multipathing, or MIMO, multiple in, multiple out. So what happens with MIMO is if I took my laptop, turn it sideways, I just halved my signal strength. So did I just move 5 meters like that? No, of course not. I just turned my laptop sideways. Change the attenuation, change how the wireless is going to bounce. So as I started working through this, I started finding white papers of people saying you can't use Wi-Fi for location tracking because lots of people want to do it. I read a story of somebody being in Walmart, and because their phone was on, you get a text when you're in front of a certain product for a coupon for that product. How are they doing that? Probably near field communication, probably maybe Wi-Fi tracking, maybe Bluetooth. Who knows? What's that? Beacons? Yeah, some sort of beacon system. And I read some papers about people trying to do it with Wi-Fi. So I'm still working on the data. I have the collection. I want to do tracking, but I think the tracking is going to be more relative. I don't think you're going to get very specific about where the data, where the person is located. So I'm still working on that. So look for that in the future. All right, proofs of attack. So this is where, well, first, everyone says that DEF CON and Black Hat, well, specifically DEF CON, is the most dangerous network in the world, right? But is it? How do we know? Yeah, we can sit here and be all scare tactic and say, it's gotta be, right? There's hackers. But unless you don't know how to defend yourself. Yeah, you can turn off all of your devices, but sometimes that's not a practical solution. Maybe you need the throughput. Maybe you don't have the data plan. You know, do you really want to be switching on and off your Wi-Fi everywhere? And how many of us, as security professionals, think about that and turn it off consciously when we leave our home? When we get to work, do we turn it back on? I always forget. I just leave mine on. YOLO, right? So that was one of the cool things about Kismet, is it's going to show us different types of attacks. So one of the types, and some of these are benign, and some of these are not really attacks. They're just situations that could lead to attacks or give us information. Because they're trying to make an intrusion detection system, so they want to show any sort of anomalous behavior. So the top one there, it's called a crypto drop, and this is directly out of the Kismet alert logs. Just to give you an idea, it's a crypto drop. Basically, that could be a dangerous situation. You had an SSID that was encrypted, that all of a sudden now is the same SSID, but it's completely open. Kind of a scary situation, right? Somebody's probably trying to do some spoofing. Somebody's trying to do something impersonation type attack. So yeah, that's something that you can see with this type of a wireless IDS. Another one is interesting, long SSIDs. When you're crafting the packets and you also are in control of the wireless driver, you can break the rules, right? Especially when you're using open source hardware. So what happens when you try to connect to something that's more than 32 characters, an SSID that's more than 32 characters long? I don't know, that's a weird situation. Have you guys ever thought about trying to broadcast with longer than the maximum allowed limit, or use characters that are that are different than what you expect, the ASCII, the typical ASCII ones. So like, these are things that I see and saw at this conference that I never really thought about. I'm like, oh, hey, yeah, that would be cool to do. So immediately what I did is I changed my iPhone SSID, or excuse me, my Android SSID to a smiley face, right? Because why not, right? Unicode rocks. So now if you see a smiley face beaconing, feel free to try to connect. That's mine. Smiles. Another one on here is ad hoc conflict. So basically, you have an access point network that changes from being in master mode to saying, oh, hey, I'm just another client. I'm an ad hoc. Let's just do this. Because sometimes maybe you can trick a device because you want to connect to your printer easier, right? You can just drop into the ad hoc mode to connect to it. So another interesting thing that pulled out of the logs. Then you've got at the bottom the Mac Daddy of them all, the broadcast disconnect. Broadcast disconnect is when somebody is hitting the broadcast with a management frame, impersonating the access point, and saying deauthenticate. How many of you heard of the deauthentication attack? Right on, yeah, pretty good number of you. So deauthentication attack is a management frame. It can be used for legitimate purposes. That access point there may ask your phone or your device, your laptop, to say, hey, you need to deauthenticate, reauthenticate. And it happens sparingly. It doesn't happen very much. In an attack environment, we'll go to the next slide and you'll see. I had 6,755 total Kismet alerts. Of those, the channel changes, which is the largest portion there in purple, probably benign, probably just access points trying to learn the environment and change channels to be more friendly. But sometimes if you can get a channel change, you can get clients to reconnect. When clients reconnect, you can sniff those handshakes. And if you do a channel change, all your clients are going to have to reconnect. So there's a potential that you could lose handshakes there. Now the next biggest one on there, which is the one in red over on the right-hand side, was deauth. That was a very large portion of that pie chart there was deauth. So clearly people were deauthenting. So when people ask, is DEF CON the most dangerous network in the world for Wi-Fi? I can say yes, it is, because people are doing attacks on there. So the other types of attacks that are notable on here was the blue at the top. That was a crypto drop. That's a number of people probably running Wi-Fi pineapples from Hack 5, or maybe rolling their own using like Metasploit or something similar, or some sort of Karma type attack, or Pine AP as it's named now, to be able to just listen for SSIDs and then rebroadcast those. So people are trying to do the impersonation type attack. And then the other one, the green one at the bottom, was an interesting one to me. That's where people were trying to take the broadcast or the access point. So if I set up a spoofed access point, and all of a sudden the timestamp changed, because a part of the management frame is a timestamp from the access point. If that all of a sudden changes, you have one SSID that's like, oh, hey, my timestamp is actual time now, but then if I'm lazy and don't properly configure my Wi-Fi pineapple and its timestamp is September 5th, 1970, or September 1st, 1970, there's an indicator, right? That somebody's trying to attack your network, just simply looking at that and finding out that there's the wrong timestamp, and that's an easy thing that you can pick up. But I never thought about that before. I'm like, oh yeah, no, I need to make sure my time's synchronized, and if I'm going to, as an attacker, I need to make sure that my time's synchronized because I'm giving away all the data. So that was really, really interesting to me. This, like I said, this project has been such a learning experience for me. Like I didn't even think about some of these things, and it's been fantastic. All right, it's time to talk about the fails. Oh man, the fails. All right, so the first one on the list, live statistics. So I had this dream of being at DEF CON, having stuff plugged into the internet, pushing it up to Amazon, pulling up a web page and being like, hey, look, there's MAC addresses. Hey, look, there's SSIDs in real time flowing. Has anybody seen the wall of sheep? Know what that is? So for you that don't know what the wall of sheep is, They were able to acquire this, the capture the packet guys were able to acquire a tap into the core router for DEF CON. And so they're getting flow through it. Then they're doing analysis on it for anyone doing any credentials in clear text. Back in the day, that was put on a wall and everybody could see it and go try to do log in with it or do bad things. Nowadays, they obfuscate most of it because that could generate some really dangerous problems. But the more important thing here is there is a huge number of people still doing things in clear text. We need to encrypt everything. Encrypt everything. Protect yourself. There's no reason why your credentials should be seen by somebody else on the wire, right? So I wanted to do something similar to that. I wanted to have live stats, be pulling up some interesting stuff, maybe flows of SSIDs. So I started writing it. I got the software mostly written. I was using Node.js, and I was using T-Shark, and I had a wrapper around it, and I was doing awesome stuff. I had this sweet front end. It was doing Ajax. Not Ajax. What's the new hotness? I don't know. Anyways, I can't remember. And anyways, I had real-time things going. There's one problem. When my PCAP size got to 100 megabytes, it crashed everything. Why? Because I was doing terrible memory management. I was pushing the whole PCAP into memory in Node.js because I'm lazy. And going from T-Shark into Node.js is hard. I was literally just doing a sys call. So that's something I want to fix and rectify. Now, the other fail that I already alluded to is the difficulty of the distance calculation due to multipathing. I had no idea about that. You can go watch. I did an interview with Hack5 right at DEF CON. And I'm like, yeah, I got location tracking, I got this, and I don't got location tracking, so not yet. There's still some maths that need to go into it. I'm going to try to figure that about a bit more. I do have general area tracking, but not location at this point. Setting the time, oh my gosh. Time is so important when you have multiple nodes deployed throughout something. They need to all be synchronized. The minnow boards have real-time clocks. I didn't put the coin cell battery in it. I didn't sync the time. So half of my boxes have decent time. The other ones are all like, I think the default time comes at like September 15th, 2007 or something like that. So I've got these weird timestamps and now I have to manipulate them. And luckily I took a bunch of pictures, so I used the timestamp of the picture after I deployed to be able to modify it to be able to know when I did deployments. Otherwise, there's no way I could get location tracking, right? Because you need overlapping nodes at the same time to see the same MAC address. And if you don't have your time synchronization, it's broken. Time is very important. The thought didn't even occur to me. I could have gone to Radio Shack, bought coin cell batteries, fixed my whole problem. Plugged them into my internet for 2 seconds, NTP'd, it would have fixed itself. Didn't even think about it. I want to give a shout out to Network Miner for my final fail. They weren't the fail. They hooked me up with their software because they thought my project was cool and let me throw it into Network Miner. Has anybody used Network Miner? So almost nobody. What Network Miner is you can go download the tool. It will take a PCAP file and forensic it for you. It'll crawl through all the layers that it can. It'll reassemble JPEGs. It will reassemble text files, HTML. It'll rebuild stuff for you, put it into a nice window where you can search it. Pretty awesome program. There's one problem. All my data was encrypted, the vast majority of it. I saw nothing in their tool. It took 4 hours to load it. There was nothing in there. I'm like, this can't be right. How can this not have any data at all? So I'm working with them. I've given them some information about it, and I'm going to give them a sample of the data. And so that way that hopefully they can write some sort of analytics, because as somebody who's weak at analysis, you need tool vendors to do it for you. And this is a case where this tool was not the right tool for the job. All right, finally, the future. So just like last year, I did pretty good on my future list last year. So I'm crossing my fingers. Hopefully we can take this to another level for next year. Number one thing, more automation. It took 9 hours to deploy the boxes. And that some of that was logistics because of the conference and getting around the conference, but some of it was me setting up the individual node itself because I had to program each one and get it going. I wanted the hardware to be more automated. I want to be able to plug in and have Kismet start instantly. I want the data to sync, so maybe backhaul radios, maybe see if I can get some funding to do maybe a parsed over 3G or something to be able to do data sync, and then something to do more automated analysis. I started writing my own T-Shark wrappers in Bash to speed it up to be able to give you the stats that I talked about today. But still, I have a long ways to go. I'm definitely not at the Splunk level by any means, and I would love to be. The other thing, more radios. Even though I significantly increased the radios that were in the boxes, it's still not enough. I still had about 33% malformed frames. That's 33% that I caught a packet in the middle of the transmission. That means that there was some channel hopping that happened. I lost some of that data. I want more frequencies for next year, and I want more uptime. I want to have more strategery and being able to place things and keep things up for longer. All right. That's the things I got to talk about. We've got some time for questions, I think, because it's about lunchtime. So if you have questions, please come line up to the mic. I'd be glad to answer any questions. Or just shout them out really loud. You can come up and check this stuff out too. Anybody have questions? Yes, and that was actually kind of a helpful thing, or not a helpful thing, sorry. That was kind of a on purpose thing because we sent pictures of the boxes to hotel staff, and I believe there was law enforcement that was involved because CGC was there. So had I not orchestrated with the conference, I'm absolutely sure that my boxes would have been confiscated, they would have been a security risk, and we would have had problems. But thanks to Dave's kind help, being able to get me in touch with the right people. The same thing happened at Black Hat. Black Hat, Bart got me in touch. Bart took pictures of the boxes and was able to push that to the hotel security and said, these are legit, leave them alone. So I did have help on that. It would have been probably a train wreck had I not. But that's an interesting thought exercise. And I'm surprised too that the attendees, we didn't have attendees doing that. And they may have. They may have just clicked the locks back on after they picked them. So, and been like, hey, this is cool. So, questions?
So can we expect the live streaming of data next year at F1?
I hope so. The question was, can we expect live streaming of data next year? I hope so. I really do hope. Yes? Did I have anything to add to the wall of sheep with my data? I did not. I would say 99.9% of the data was encrypted, which is rad, which is really great. So the only thing that I could possibly give them was MDNS from iPhones. iPhones were saying, hey, I'm Mike's phone, all over MDMS. That's MDNS. That was pretty much the only thing that I saw. So, which is going to be nice when I start doing, trying to take MAC addresses and turning them into people, because I'll at least know who some of the iPhone users are, because some people use their full name when they set up their phone and label it. So, yes. The question is, was I able to see MAC addresses moving around? And yes, I was able to see MAC addresses moving around. So I can take a MAC address and query it in one PCAP file, take it to another one, and see it in a completely different location. So I'm seeing, of those unique MAC addresses, I've got probably 1,000 times more packets logged with those MAC addresses. So absolutely, yes. I just haven't put it together in a nice map format. Question? The question is, what are the additional analytics that I'm going to do with the data? What I want to do is the location, try to do location correlation analysis. Packet flow analysis would be interesting to see how much, like what the usage is, and kind of understand the flow and the draw on the network. And then beyond that, I hope to give these packets and put them on the web, put them on the internet, and make them available for other people, because I don't know all the answers. I'm not the best at this type of stuff, and I think that it'd be rad to get a community involved. So I'm working. I've sent some emails back and forth with the EFF. I just want to make sure there isn't any legal implications with dropping these raw PCAP files. But my goal is to have them open and available to the world. So, any other questions? Awesome. You guys have been great. Let's make some noise.